Apex Legends has had over 30 LTMs since the game launched back in 2019, including fan favorites like Solos, Winter Express, and many more. I'll be diving into each one of these game modes from oldest to newest and ranking them from F to S tier. Let me know down below which LTM was your favorite that you got to play, and consider hitting the like button as it truly does help me out. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Apex Elite Queue was the very first LTM ever introduced into Apex Legends and ended up being somewhat of a trial version of the ranked game mode. The gameplay and everything like that was identical to the standard Battle Royale mode of trios. However, in order to even access the Elite Queue, you needed to reach top 5 in a match to unlock it. In order to continue playing this game mode, you needed to continue to finish in the top 5 every single match. This idea was interesting at the time, and with it came some of the rarest badges in the game, including the 888 badge, where you needed to win at least 8 Apex Elite Queue matches with 8 different legends with at least 8 kills in each game, plus the one that tracked how many top 5 games you got in a row. I remember wanting to see how many top 5 finishes I could get and ended up with around 8 in a row. However, there were much more fun LTMs than this one, so I'm placing it in the B category. Solos might be the most asked for LTM to return, but sadly we've only ever seen it once officially in-game all the way back in August of 2019 during the Iron Crown Collection event. In this game mode, there were 60 solo players fighting it out on Kings Canyon to determine who would be the champion. This mode honestly worked really well in Season 1 of Apex Legends, as there weren't a whole lot of legends at that time. If this game mode ever came back in today's version of Apex, I truly don't think it would be as fun as it was then. The devs at Respawn are also very against the idea of solos, as they see Apex Legends as being a very team-oriented game. This game mode was such a test of yourself and your skill in the game, as you couldn't blame anyone else but yourself if something went wrong. Winning a solos game was incredibly satisfying, knowing that you came out victorious against all 59 other solo players in the game. Despite this LTM being a fan favorite, other ones are much cooler and more thought out than solos. I'm giving this a B. Next up, Armed and Dangerous. This LTM has periodically come back to Apex here and there, but over the years the mode has changed. Essentially, Armed and Dangerous is shotguns and snipers only, but when this first launched in 2019, weapons like the G7 Scout and Triple Take were technically counted as sniper rifles since the marksman category didn't exist at the time. This mode is super fun as it really focuses on skill level with weapons that require precision aiming. You could either have 1 shotgun and 1 sniper, or focus on long range with 2 snipers, or be really aggressive with 2 shotguns. Personally, this is one of my favorite LTMs that Apex Legends has ever introduced, which is why I'm giving it A tier. Next up, Shadowfall. Shadowfall was Apex's original Halloween mode, and if you never got to experience this, then I am truly sorry for you, as you missed out on one of the best modes in Apex Legends history. Also, Revenant was the announcer for this mode, and his comments were brutal.
And a champion died. Food for the maggots.
The LTM starts out with 60 legends as solos fighting against each other, but the main goal is to survive and reach an evac ship later on in the game. If you get eliminated, you respawn in shadow form. You and all other players who have been eliminated are working together as shadows to try and eliminate the other remaining alive legends. Once there are only 10 alive players left, they become a team of 10 versus the shadows and are working together to try and reach the evac ship to escape. This mode was seriously such a blast, and it was the first time that wall running was implemented into Apex Legends. There were some games where people would leave right after they became a shadow, but honestly I enjoyed either being a shadow or being alive in this mode. This LTM was so much fun and holds a special place in my heart for early Apex Legends gameplay, which is why I'm giving it S tier. Apex Legends cooked so hard in the first year that the game was released with the limited time game modes, and Winter Express is a true testament of that. I'm sure most of you have played Winter Express, but for those that haven't, there are 3 teams fighting against each other to control the train on World's Edge. A fun fact is that Mirage was the announcer for the Winter Express game mode.
Heads up, train's moving. My brothers and I used to fight over who got to play with toy trains all the time. I lost. I got a noogie. And don't lose, because those noogies hurt.
In order to win, you either have to eliminate the other teams or take control of the train for over 10 seconds. There are multiple rounds, and the train travels around the map to different POIs. The first team to 3 round wins will be the winner of the game. Now, a cool part about this LTM is that healing items can be used twice as fast, which was super fun. This LTM has come back every winter season except for the most recent one in Season 19. Honestly, as the game progressed and more legends came out that could hold down areas such as Rampart, Fuse, and Catalyst, the Winter Express game mode didn't hold up how it used to. Not to mention, there were glitches in the LTM, including one where Loba could teleport inside the box on the train, causing the game to go on forever as she couldn't be eliminated and the other teams couldn't capture the train. However, Winter Express is some of the most fun I have ever had in Apex Legends for how ridiculous of a mode it was. I honestly wish this game mode was part of Mixtape, as I would play this all the time. This lands in the S tier category for me. Now, stepping away from the typical LTMs for just a second, I want to talk about the unique April Fool's modes that we have had each year within Apex Legends and rank them separately, since they aren't true LTMs but but still unique changes to the way Apex Legends was played for a short period of time. These April Fool's modes only lasted for 1 day each and were some of the most fun I have had in the game. Our first April Fool's mode was introduced in 2020, where the Mozambique and P2020 were incredibly powerful. You could find fully kitted gold versions of these weapons around the map, and they had increased magazine sizes and damage. This same April Fool's event took place in 2021 as well, but the Mozambique was slightly nerfed during that event. In 2022, a brand new Mozambique known as Old Nessie was introduced, where you could shoot out large Nessies that would automatically attack enemies. These acted similar to the spiders on Stormpoint. In 2023, 4 brand new Mozambiques released for the April Fool's event. There was the Mozambique, which acted similar to the R99 with a mag size of 36 and used light ammo. There was the Mozambique, which was essentially an even stronger version of the Hemlock. There was the Mozamblam, which was basically the Kraber but in a Mozambique. And lastly, there was the Mozambeam, which took energy ammo and acted just like the single fire Havoc from the old days of Apex Legends. Also, if you ping doors or zip lines, they would simply blow up and give you a Mozambique. Ranking these 4 different versions of the April Fool's LTMs, I would put the 2020 and 2021 versions at B tier, the 2022 version at C tier, and the 2023 version at A tier. Now back to the actual LTMs. Next up, we're going to talk about the 7 different LTMs that released during the Grand Soiree Collection event in Season 3. There was Gold Rush Duos, Live Die Live, Third Person Mode, Always Be Closing, Dummies Big Day, and the After Dark regular Battle Royale modes for both World's Edge and King's Canyon. For all of these Grand Soiree LTMs, they were only in the game for 2 days each. Starting off with Gold Rush Duos, the objective was the same as regular duos, but the loot was different. The only weapons that were available in this game mode were fully kitted gold ones and care package weapons. Honestly, this is somewhat similar to the straight shot LTM we just had in Season 20, where you don't need to worry about attachments. Gold Rush Duos was a really cool idea, with everyone having very powerful weapons in their loadout. This was fun to play, but honestly, this was nothing groundbreaking, which is why I would rank it at the C level. Live Die Live was actually very similar to what we know as 3 strikes today. In this game mode, when players were eliminated, they actually didn't drop their banner cards. Instead, every time that the next ring began to close in, eliminated players would spawn in the sky directly above their alive teammates and skydive down to get back into the action. This mode was really fun and allowed for some crazy plays, since you'd think an enemy team was down a player or 2, but then their teammates would come back to life ready to fight. This was a really cool idea at the time, and it realistically had some influence on what 3 strikes is today, which is why I'm ranking this as B tier. Also part of the Grand Soiree event was Third Person Mode, which is pretty self-explanatory. From an objective standpoint, this game mode was the exact same as normal trios. However, instead of being in first person view, you were in third person view. When you ADS'd or aimed down the sights on certain weapons, such as snipers, this would jump back to first person view, but for other weapons like SMGs, you would remain in third person, but the crosshairs would get tighter. Of course, in today's version of Apex, you can test out third person view in the firing range, but actually being able to play Battle Royale in this view was insane. It felt so different, especially when peeking around corners. One of the best parts about this LTM was the fact that you could actually see what skin you were wearing instead of just seeing your hands in first person view. I feel like we'll see this LTM back at some point, especially since it's available in the firing range, but I'd give this LTM a solid A rating for how unique it makes Apex Legends feel. Next up, the Always Be Closing LTM was a very interesting game mode. As the name suggests, the ring was continuously closing in this LTM, and it dealt the highest amount of damage at all times, meaning you really did not want to get caught in it. There was a variation of this LTM known as Always Be Closing Evolved, which released in the middle of 2020 as well. The only difference was that all players spawn with a Mozambique and 16 shotgun rounds. Also, the graffiti hop-up mod could be found in the game. This mode was really fun as it encouraged intense and aggressive gameplay, as players had to be constantly aware of their surroundings and make quick decisions in order to stay ahead of the ring. I would rank this LTM as B tier. The last of the Grand Soiree LTMs is none other than Dummies Big Day. In this LTM, the dummies from the firing range are the only playable legends in trios. You can choose one of 8 colors: blue, orange, green, purple, red, gray, pink, and yellow. Also, in case you didn't know, Dummy stands for Digital Utility Mockman Intelligent Example. All dummies have the same abilities. They didn't really have a passive, but it is known as Good Hustle, with the description being, "We're really proud of you, sweetie." Their tactical, known as Loot Spawner, summoned a random loot item for testing purposes, of course. And lastly, the Dummy's Ultimate. There were actually 3 separate ultimates, and you would randomly get one each time you activated it. The first one was known as Emergency Dance Party, which spawned 5 decoys that mirror your actions. This eventually eventually became what we know now as Mirage's ultimate ability. The second ultimate ability was Emergency Loot Pinata, which dropped a huge cluster of loot from the sky for you and your team. And lastly, the third ultimate was Emergency Area Heal, which healed all nearby players, including enemies. This LTM was one of the craziest modes due to the fact that every player had all of the same abilities. You had to rely on your game sense and weapon skills in order to be victorious in this mode. Dummie's Big Day is one of the coolest ideas Apex has ever done for an LTM, which is why I'm giving it S tier. Up next, we've got the rest of the LTMs that came out during 2020. Deja Loot released during the System Override event in Season 4, and it is one of the more interesting game modes. This event lasted 2 weeks, but switched up slightly every 24 hours. Each day, loot spawned in the same spot every single game, the dropship took the same path every game, the ring closed in the same spot every game, and care packages landed in the same place every game. The next day, however, the location of loot and everything else would change, but remain in that spot for 24 hours, and then the process would repeat. This was really fun, but honestly also annoying at the same time, as people would focus on where purple shields were and go for those immediately off of drop. This was a really unique idea at the time, but I feel like it wouldn't work that well in today's version of the game, which is probably why we haven't seen it make a return. I'm giving this one C tier. Also released in Season 4 was the Battle Armor LTM. Every legend dropped with a P2020, hollow sight, 20 rounds of light ammo, and 2 syringes. For the entire duration of the game, only one armor type was available. At this point in time, Evo shields did not exist, so you couldn't upgrade your shield any further. The first few days were white shields only, then blue, and finally purple. It was interesting knowing that whoever you were fighting was going to have the same shields as you, but besides that, it was a pretty lackluster LTM. This one is D tier for me. During Season 6 Aftermarket Collection event, the Flashpoint LTM was introduced for the first time. Now, this game mode was similar to the Always Be Closing LTM, where the ring was continuously closing in on the players. Additionally, various POIs on the map had Flashpoint zones that restored shields and health automatically. You needed to not take any damage at all for 6 seconds in order for the Flashpoint to start healing you. Healable items such as shield batteries, medkits, syringes, and more were removed from ground loot, but you could still craft some of these items from the replicators. The final zone always closed on top of a Flashpoint POI, which resulted in crazy endgames since players automatically healed. Personally, I thought this was a really cool game mode, and I remember having a bunch of fun playing this with friends. I feel like it worked really well on the Kings Canyon map too. The auto healing mechanics ultimately came to the mixtape modes, which is cool to see. I would give the Flashpoint LTM an A rating. Apex's second Halloween mode after Shadowfall was the Shadow Royale LTM. Now, this originally released in 2020 during Season 6's Fighter for It event, but it also returned during the Halloween season in 2021 and 2022. In this game mode, legends cannot be respawned. However, if a legend gets eliminated, then they automatically respawn as a shadow. Shadows only have 65 health, but their melee attacks deal 50 damage. They have increased movement speed, can wall run, and are able to revive knocked teammates. If you get eliminated as a shadow, you will have a slight cooldown before respawning again. You'll continue to respawn until all normal legends on your team are eliminated or you win. This mode during October honestly fits the vibe of the season so well, which makes it really fun. Paired with the After Dark maps, this is a solid LTM. It's no Shadowfall, but it's a fun twist on the Battle Royale game mode. I'm giving this one A tier. Moving into 2021, there were 8 brand new LTMs that got released this year, but one of them actually never made it into the game, which we'll go over shortly. First up, during Season 7's Fight Night Collection event, the Airdrop Escalation LTM was introduced. This was technically a Trios Takeover event, but in this game mode, a high number of care packages spawned every round. These could contain helmets, body shields, or fully kitted weapons. The cool part about this was that the rarity of these care packages increased each round. So in the earlier stages of the game, you could expect blue level care packages, but as the game progressed, better care packages would land, including purple, gold, and mythic level ones. This honestly wasn't my favorite game mode and was pretty lackluster compared to others, which is why I'm giving it C tier. Next up, the Locked and Loaded LTM took place during Apex's anniversary event in Season 8. This one was also a takeover within the Trios playlist. Essentially, level 1 gear and attachments were not part of ground loot at all. Every legend landed with a helmet, Evo shield, knockdown shield, backpack, Mozambique with a level 1 shotgun bolt and HCOG sight, plus 16 rounds of shotgun ammo, 2 shield cells, and 2 syringes. Everything else was the same as regular Battle Royale. This honestly wasn't anything special of an LTM besides that you didn't have to worry about low tier gear clogging up the loophole. It was a pretty lame game mode when you compare it to the other ones and deserves to live in the D tier section. The Ring Fury LTM was an escalation type of game mode, meaning that every few days things got a little bit crazier. A fun fact about this LTM is that the announcer was actually Mad Maggie.
Kia ora, it's Maggie. You taking your sweet time turning on Wally? So let's turn the heat up on you.
Ring Fury came out during the Chaos Theory Collection event in Season 8 and was super interesting. There was a normal ring closing in, but on top of this were ring flares. These ring flares were essentially smaller rings that would appear across the map. They dealt the same amount of damage as the normal ring. Now, as I mentioned, every few days the intensity of these ring flares would change. Level 1 of the LTM had a small number of small ring flares across the map. Level 2 had one large ring flare within the ring, plus small ring flares across the map. Level 3 had multiple large ring flares within the ring, plus small ring flares across the map. Level 4 had a large number of large ring flares across the map, and level 5 was absolutely insane as there were at least 20 ring flares of various sizes across the map. Now, this was pure chaos and at any point could change your plans of how you were going to rotate to your next spot because of the ring flares. I thought this game mode was super unique, but remember that there were some bugs with it if I'm not mistaken. It was a really cool idea that changed the pace of the game, which is why I'm giving it B tier. The Second Chance LTM was the first of a few LTMs in the War Games event during Season 8. During the War Games event, there was a secret LTM that actually never made its way into the game, which we'll go over soon. Within Second Chance, every player is equipped with one respawn token. Players can use these tokens once per match to respawn above the position they were eliminated at. You kept the items that you were eliminated with and would skydive back down to your team. There were unfortunately some bugs with this game mode, and ultimately it was only in the game for less than 24 hours. This had similar vibes to 3 Strikes, but the fact that it didn't work that well makes me give this D tier. Also in the War Games event was the Armor Regen LTM, which works similar to the Flashpoint game mode. In Armor Regen, shields would automatically heal over time at a rate of 12 HP per second. This would activate after not taking damage for 8 seconds. This cooldown is doubled to 16 seconds if your shield got fully cracked. Also, shield cells were completely removed from the loot pool during this LTM. Armor Regen was a really cool idea and made some interesting plays, but it was nothing too special. This one gets C tier for me. Ultra Zones was the third LTM within the War Games event, which also worked similar to the Flashpoint game mode. Instead of one hot drop POI on the map, there would be 3 hot zones. Additionally, each of these hot zones acted as a Flashpoint zone, which would auto heal you. There's nothing more to this game mode than that, and honestly, it's a pretty forgettable LTM. Having additional high tier loot was nice, but that's about it. I'm giving this one D tier. Next up in the War Games event was auto banners, but unfortunately this LTM also lasted only one day due to various bugs. The idea of this game mode is exactly what the title suggests. When a legend is eliminated, their banner card is automatically retrieved by their teammates. Additionally, mobile respawn beacons spawned more frequently. This LTM really didn't work at all from what I remember, so I can't really judge it all that well. Even if it did work though, I would assume that it felt pretty similar to regular BR, and that's why I'm putting it in the F category. Now, the 5th and final mode within the War Games event was supposed to be the Killing Time LTM. If this mode actually existed, it would have been so cool. This event speeds up the match as legends fall. During a round, whenever a legend gets eliminated, the round time is reduced. If any given round is a massacre, you can bet that the ring will be closing really quick. Unfortunately, no one has ever played this LTM as the devs decided not to launch it since there were so many bugs with it, but it sounds so fun and chaotic. I can't really rate this one, but just wanted to mention it. Hopefully it does release at some point, but honestly, I'm not holding my breath. Before Control, Gunrun, and Team Deathmatch were in the mixtape playlist, they were actually first brought into the Apex games as LTMs to trial run and have players test them out. Now, you should be familiar with all of these modes since they're available in mixtape, so I'm not going to dive into the specifics of each game mode, but I will rank them quickly. For me, Control is the worst of the 3 as I find it really boring and not as fast paced as the other 2, which is why I give it C tier. Team Deathmatch is a classic game mode that plays as you would expect. Nothing fancy about it, but also nothing bad. Solid B rating for me. And lastly is Gunrun. Now, this might be controversial, but Gunrun is so fun to me. I love cycling through the different weapons, trying to complete all of them before the other teams. I find this one to be so incredibly fun and exhilarating, which is why I would rate it A tier. Next up, during Apex's Celestial Sunrise Collection event with one of the most ridiculous final rewards in an event, the Hardcore Royale game mode was introduced. In this LTM, the HUD or heads-up display on your screen is hidden except for your tactical and ultimate charge status. Additionally, helmets and shields were removed from the loot pool, and shield swaps were non-existent in boxes. The ring also dealt a whopping 25 damage per tick the entire game. This was a fun idea, but for me, this isn't anything groundbreaking. From what I recall, you could still access the map and see where you needed to go, you just didn't have the mini-map in the top corner. This LTM was pretty lackluster and falls in the C tier category. The Date Night game mode was a takeover for the Duos playlist during the Valentine's Day sale in Season 15. This LTM was really cool and in my opinion was Respawn testing something similar to what would eventually become Conduit's Tactical. Whenever a healable item was used, a circle would be cast around that legend. If the teammate of that legend was inside the circle, they would also be healed at the same time. Additionally, a variation of the bow check bow known as the Heart Sealer was available in this game mode. When you dealt damage to enemies with the weapon, 50% of the damage inflicted would actually heal you. Honestly, this was such a fun game mode and made you prioritize sticking close to your duo. This was the perfect type of game mode for a Valentine's Day event, and I'm giving this one A tier. During the Sun Squad collection event in Season Season 16, where we were blessed with the Loba swimsuit skin, the Heatwave LTM made its way into the Apex games. This mode was somewhat similar to the Ring Fury LTM, but with a twist. The style of this game mode was normal trios, but periodically there would be heat waves that would occur, which caused damage to players who were outside and exposed to the sun. A heat wave would last for 25 seconds and had 80 seconds before another one popped up. If you were outside during a heat wave, you would take damage at 3 HP per tick. Besides being inside a building, there were other ways to dodge the heat wave damage. If you were sliding for whatever reason, you didn't take damage. Additionally, care packages had a special item known as sunglasses, which when equipped, reduced the damage from 3 to 1. Heat shields were also able to be used to protect against the heat waves. I enjoyed this mode and thought it tied in really well with the theme of the collection event. B tier rating is what I would give this one. Quite possibly the worst LTM ever in Apex Legends was the TDM Unshielded game mode. This was our only ever LTM to a mixtape mode so far, and in this game mode, every player had the same loadout and also no armor at all. The loadouts could contain Krabers, Sentinels, and other gold or red weapons. On paper, this game mode sounded really fun, but half the time you would just get sniped across the map instantly and get eliminated since you didn't have any shields to protect you. Personally, I think this was such a lackluster event and belongs in the F tier category. Next up, during the Neon Network collection event, the Node Tracker Trios Takeover LTM was introduced. The only thing that was different than normal trios about this game mode was that each player landed with a node tracker device. You could use this to detect where you needed to go to find special loot ticks. These loot ticks could range from blue to red, providing you some great gear. Also, you would receive computer nodes currency that could be used in the reward shop of the event to unlock skins and cosmetics. This was a well-integrated LTM for the collection event, but the overall mode wasn't anything special. I would place this one in C tier. Now, during the Harbingers collection event in Season 18, Halloween came a little early with the Living Shell Trios LTM. This was a takeover mode where it was essentially trios, however, there was a special grenade known as the Rev Shell. This grenade, when thrown, would fly in a straight line until it located a nearby enemy. It would then lock onto that player and zoom towards them. Once it reaches the target, it would pause for half a second, then explode, dealing a little more than 50 damage. Players, however, could shoot these Rev Shells out of the sky before they reached you. Also, these Rev Shells had unique voice lines and animations when you inspected them.
Bet they programmed you a failure. Or can you prove me wrong?
This was a really cool LTM and tied in nicely with Revenant being reborn that season. It wasn't the craziest game mode, but for me, it was really fun and got me in the Halloween spirit, so I would give it B tier. Later in the same season, we had the Tricks and Treats Trios LTM instead of our usual Shadow Royale game mode during the month of October. With Tricks and Treats Trios, a brand new survival item known as a Copycat Kit was introduced. These Copycat Kits had certain abilities from various legends, such as Wraith's Phase, Bloodhound Scan, Octane's Bounce Pad, and more. This meant that players could use these abilities within the Copycat Kit in addition to their normal abilities. Also, a new item known as Candy was introduced. When you consumed Candy, you were awarded with 75 Evo points, a 20% addition to your ultimate charge, and it healed 25 shields for you over time. This was a unique Halloween mode that Apex came out with, but I would have liked to see some additional abilities in the Copycat Kit item. At the end of the day, I would rather have Shadow Royale than Tricks and Treats Trios, so I would give this one C tier. 3 Strikes released alongside the Post Malone event in Season 19, and this seems to be one of the most loved LTMs that Apex has ever released. It has already come back a few times since then, but in case you haven't played it, each team gets a total of 3 chances to win the game. If your entire team gets eliminated, you will respawn in the air and skydive back down. In addition to this, knock teammates cannot get finished or bleed out. Revives also happen insanely fast, so legends like Lifeline, Mirage, or Newcastle are wild in this mode, but honestly, you can stick a revive so quick that any legend is viable in this LTM. When this game mode first came out, I was absolutely hooked, and to me, this is what pubs needs to evolve into. The BR genre is getting a little bit old, if I'm being honest, and the constant rinse and repeat of starting with nothing and finding gear each game is getting stale. But 3 Strikes changed that, as you would respawn with your gear when eliminated instead of having to go back to the lobby and search for another game and start the process all over. Pair that with the fast revives, and this game mode felt like such an adrenaline rush of constant fighting and pushing, which is exactly what I want. 3 Strikes is some of the most fun I've ever had in Apex Legends, and I truly hope they take some of the elements from it and rework it into pubs somehow. This is a solid S tier for me. Also in Season 19, the Revenant Uprising LTM released, which corresponded with the final video of the Kill Code series. There were also special cinematic sequences that you could only experience a couple of times during the event, which was pretty cool. Essentially, Revenant Uprising was a similar vibe to the original Shadowfall game mode, the one where you needed to escape via an evac ship, but honestly, this LTM was so poorly executed. At the start of the game, 30 players would spawn as legends and the other 30 would spawn as revenants on the Revenant army team. An evac ship gets pinged right away, and legends have 8 minutes to fight off the the Revenants until the evac ship lands. Ammo is unlimited in this mode, and all weapons are kitted, meaning you don't have to worry about attachments. If your entire team gets eliminated, then you respawn on the Revenant army team to try and take down the remaining alive legends before they make it to the evac ship. Just like the Shadowfall game mode, those that are on the Revenant army team have quicker movement, wall running capabilities, and increased melee damage. If you deal the most damage on the Revenant army, you will respawn as the Red-Eyed Revenant. This version of Revenant has a red shield equipped, a care package Prowler and Kraber with unlimited ammo, arc stars, grenades, thermites, and an evac tower. This Revenant can also use his ultimate and replenishes his red shield with each knock. On paper, this game mode sounds absolutely incredible, but playing this mode felt so lackluster and boring. People didn't really want to play on the Revenant army, especially from the beginning of the game, so a lot of these players would end up leaving the game right away, leading to a disadvantage. Also, this was played on Stormpoint, and the map was just way too large to hunt down legends, as you would sometimes spawn on the other side of the map just to run and try to knock an enemy. This was a really cool idea, but it just didn't play well and ultimately was not fun, which is why I'm giving it D tier. Apex Legends' first official crossover event was with Final Fantasy VII at the beginning of 2024. Elements from Final Fantasy were brought into the game, including the Buster Sword that could be used in-game. This LTM was a takeover on the Trios game mode, and it was wild. The Buster Sword could be found around the map and in care packages. It had multiple attacks, including a light attack, heavy attack, launch, slam, dash, block, and limit break. Now, this sword reached super long. You could also launch people into the air, then spam the light attack button to keep them floating up there and eliminate them with ease. This thing was insanely strong and got people upset fast. On top of the Buster Sword being in the game, there were also 5 materia hop-ups that could go on certain weapons. Red materia summoned a Nessie friend that followed you around and dealt damage to enemies automatically. Yellow materia would give you the ability to see how much health an enemy had when you damaged them with that weapon. Green materia sent out a lightning strike which slowed and stunned enemies similar to an arc star whenever you reloaded that empty weapon. Blue materia acted somewhat similar to the Heartstealer bow from the Valentine's Day event, where damage inflicted to enemies healed yourself at the same time. And lastly, it was the purple materia which provided extra damage to enemies. The Final Fantasy LTM was a really fun way to play the game and felt like it was really thought out. Sure, the Buster Sword was a little bit broken, but I would rather have things be broken and fun for a limited time rather than things be boring. I had a blast playing this game mode and would give it a solid A rating. Straight Shot was the first new LTM of Season 20, which also brought perks and a whole new shield progression system to the game. This game mode is a great introductory LTM to new and even returning players who want to quickly get into fights. For starters, there is no more Jump Master. Your team and one enemy team will spawn above a POI and skydive down. There are no attachments on the ground, only kitted weapons so you can get into fights faster. Also, there are only a total of 10 teams instead of 20, as you do start with a smaller ring than normal. The main objective of this LTM is to get in more reps of Battle Royale in less time. If your team does get eliminated, you can actually re-queue into another game right away without having to go back to the lobby, making it really fast to just keep playing. My opinion on this LTM might not align with some of yours, but for me, I really couldn't get into this game mode. After the first initial fight of the other team at our POI, it always felt like I was just running around trying to find additional teams. I think I would have liked this LTM much more if there were 20 teams rather than 10, since after the first few minutes, the teams remaining typically drop to between 5 and 7. Now, this LTM wasn't for me, but if you enjoyed it, I hope that they bring it back sometime soon for you. I'm rating this one C tier. Releasing within the Inner Beast collection event was the Hunt LTM. This game mode was a takeover for both the duos and trios playlists. In this mode, you are able to find and use hunt data pads, which will reveal an enemy team's location on the map for you to eliminate. If you are being hunted, you have a meter to warn you of how close the hunting team is to you. As the hunters, your objective is to eliminate your prey, and as the prey, your objective is to either outlast the timer or eliminate the hunters. If you do successfully eliminate the team, you are rewarded with some high tier loot, including batteries, medkits, and even care package weapons. Personally, I think this is a pretty lackluster game mode. I enjoy the rewards that you get from completing a hunt, but this really isn't anything special to me. I'm giving this one C tier. And there we have it, every single LTM in Apex Legends history. Does my tier list align with your thoughts about these game modes? Let me know down below. If you made it this far, thank you so much, and here's a polka dot Nessie for you. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.